fix my hair. Wrong place.
Good day, everyone. Good morning. I'm laughing because I already said this and I did not hit the live button. So, good morning again, ladies. Good day. Welcome to Peak Wellness Hour with Peak Home Care Associates. My name is Angelina. We have Edith here with Peak Home Care, the founder of Peak Home Care, and we are so blessed to have Christy Kohler here with Traditions Health and Hospice. She is the account executive there, and we're excited to have her by way of Lori, which is who is an amazing nurse with Traditions Health and Hospice. So we're so honored to have Christy here with us to share some information about hospice and the benefits of hospice. Really quickly, because I said this already, and I think it's important to kind of refresh your memory. So sorry again, Christy, but really quickly, the last 2 weeks we've been speaking about um, home care and the benefits of home care. We've talked about caregiving and companionship when we've talked about respite. We will talk about 24-hour and living care. But I know we spoke also about hospice being beneficial even with home care. Okay. So we're going to have that conversation today. We're not going to hold Christy up. I know she's been here for quite some time with us, hanging out with us. We've gotten to know her a little bit and just kind of dive into some things with hospice as well. So, we appreciate her time. She may not be here for the whole time because it's a Saturday and people have stuff to do. So we appreciate you all being here with us. We appreciate Miss Christy being here with us on behalf of Traditions Health and Hospice and her own knowledge. Okay. So I'm going to stop talking. We're going to dive into a conversation about the benefits of hospice. Um, we're going to, if you have any questions, we want to encourage you to please put those in the comments. We want to encourage you to like and share so that other people can get this information. We promise it is going to be G-rated and pleasant, and we want to help you all the best we can, you and your loved ones. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to let Edith speak for a moment, and we're going to introduce you to Christy and share with you why she's so awesome. Edith.
Hello, friends and family. Hello, home care community, hospice community, all of you, especially within the states of Indiana. We're excited to come your way once again. I want to give a special shout out to Lori. And thank you for connecting us with Christy. You do an amazing job, and your heart is so easily seen in the work you do. Thank you for sticking with our families and our friends at the end of their lives. But enough said. You know already, Picom Care. We are in Noblesville. Our offices are in Noblesville, Indiana. Our phone numbers will come down there. And so, well, if you need to reach out, feel free. If you need help, feel free. If you have a question, please. Our office walls are, of course, shut in, but we are open 24 hours, 7 days a week on our phones and all on electronically. So Facebook, YouTube, and the phone numbers reach out to us at your convenience or when you really need it. Hopefully you don't wait till then. Christy, I'll let you take over.
Okay. Well, thank you, ladies. It is a pleasure and a privilege to be here Education is one of the biggest things that I do as an account executive with Traditions because, unfortunately, hospice in particular gets a bad rap when it comes to that level of care in senior care. And just a little about myself, this month marks 10 years that I have been in senior care. And throughout that decade, I've done a little bit of everything. So I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly because I've been around long enough to have seen that. And I tell people that when I came into the senior industry, uh, 10 years ago, I didn't have a clue. I didn't know what there was. And I came from a small town and thought that, once your loved one gets to be a certain age, they go to a stereotypical nursing home, and that's how their life progresses. And like I said, I've seen a little bit of everything. So I like to be a resource, whether that be hospice or other aspects of senior care. And as you mentioned, home care and hospice can and do work really well together. We can go hand in hand to provide all levels of care and the support that the families and patients need. So, um, I've been with Traditions a little over 2 years. We have an office in Indianapolis that I am part of. We cover Marion County and the Donut counties. So we're in much of central Indiana. And then in Indiana, we also have two offices in Crown Point and Mishawaka. But Traditions is nationwide. We are located in 18 states. So we actually, have patients who can travel to other states, and we can let them, still live their best life while on hospice care. So we can provide that care other places as well. So, like I said, been with Traditions for a couple years, and you mentioned Lori, one of our nurses, the one who connected us. Connected myself with Edith and Angelina because Lori has worked with some of your patients as well, but our entire team is incredible. I
Awesome.
can't I can't say enough good things about their compassion and their true caring for our patients and families and loved ones. Traditions just really does it well because it's very patient centered and focused. So I do have a kind of a Hospice 101 slideshow presentation that I will go through. Um, Ladies, feel free to interrupt me or we can, answer questions at the end. But I thought this was just kind of an overview, a 30,000-foot view of hospice. And then I'm always happy to answer more specific questions as well. So let me see if I can share my screen.
Okay. And while she's sharing that screen, her information, her business information is down up below on the screen. So if you're watching live and you have questions, put them in the chat and maybe she can answer your questions. If not, then maybe you can email her if you have questions pertaining to hospice. And you can always email us regarding home care. But if you need hospice a support, here's a number for you or an email for you to connect with. Um, and she can give you those answers. So make sure you all jot down her information. That's Christy.Kohler@traditionshealth.com. Do not do what I do and leave out the health when I sent her the invitation to this link. So thank you, Edith. I've been busy, you all. I've been very busy. So I need
Okay.
to
It's
get
taking me a second. Let's
okay.
see. Okay, I think maybe I have this. Okay. Are you guys able to see that?
Not
Yeah.
yet.
Here we
Us.
go.
Are you able to see? It says
Yes,
Traditions Health.
ma'am. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Husband.
Traditions Health, Hospice 101, just a brief overview of what hospice is, understanding hospice and palliative care. They are two different things. And I get the question of whether we do palliative care at Traditions, and I say the short answer is yes. We can provide that level of care, and I will just briefly go into that as well, but not a whole lot about palliative, just a little bit about the differences. So, a fact is 25% of deaths occur at home, and more than 80% of Americans would prefer to die at home. And this is a good way that hospice and home care like Peak can work together, because we can strive to keep those patients at home as long as possible. I know, at least for myself, going to the hospital is not ideal. And so I definitely would not want to have end of life be in the hospital either. So our goal is to keep patients out of the hospital. I say we become the new 911. Once someone comes on to services, we would like for families or the nursing facility, if they are there, to call us, and we can help to care for the patient without having to send them to the hospital. So, um, hospice provides support and care for those in the last phases of a life limiting illness. A little difference about Traditions is that we don't focus on end of life, on specifically that hospice is the end of life. We know that that is the stage that our patients are in, but the second bullet there says, we recognize dying is a natural part of living, and we want to focus on living and making the final days, whatever time that a patient has left, we want to make sure that that is the quality and the kind of life that they want and that their families are going to remember. Hospice care neither hastens nor postpones death. We let the disease progression take its natural path. So sometimes we have patients who rebound and they get a little bit better once they have that one-on-one specialized nursing and aid and support care that they need. So they might actually do a little bit better. And patients tend to live longer with hospice than they would have without. Again, focuses on the quality of life for individuals and their family caregivers. So, one part of that that I can speak to that Traditions does, that's unique to our program, is we have something called Dare to Dream. Our Dare to Dream program is kind of like, it's granting an end of life wish. I liken it to Make a Wish, in that if there is something that would be memorable for a patient and or their family, we want to try to help them with, live that out. One example that we recently did for a patient of mine, her grandson plays college football, and we were able to take her and her family to see him play in a college football game. So that was really important to the family. They had a great reunion with some family members who hadn't been able to see their mother in some time. So things like that are what we like to try to focus on, rather than this is the very end of life. We want to focus on the quality of life. We are patient and family focused. As I mentioned, everything is tailored to what the family and that patient needs. It's not a cookie cutter model. We operate with that patient and their specific needs in mind. We have an interdisciplinary care team that provides a range of services, and that includes, it starts with, from the top down, I guess, our medical director, who is kind of the head of the team. The medical director um, can order medications and work with the nurse to uh, to make changes to medication or order an antibiotic, things like that. And then also, an RN case manager and a hospice aide are part of the team for clinical care, as well as a chaplain and social worker, also part of the team. And then volunteers also are available for social visits if we have a patient who would benefit from interaction outside the clinical. That's what the volunteers are there for. And then we also cover equipment and medications. So the durable medical equipment can be anything from a wheelchair or a walker that a patient doesn't already have, or a hospital bed if that provides more comfort. I like to say that the good thing about traditions is they don't tell me no very often, especially when it comes to equipment. If it's something that a patient is going to benefit from, then we're going to do our best to get that. And again, they don't tell me no because we evaluate, and if it can be proven that a patient needs a piece of equipment to make their life easier and better, then we're going to do what we need to get that. Additional services, there are some residential care facilities that cover hospice. We at Traditions do not have a hospice house per se, but we can provide care in those facilities. Inpatient hospice care is when a patient is in the hospital because their symptoms cannot be managed outside the hospital. In that case, then we would still send a nurse to provide that extra level of support to what they're getting from the hospital. Um, Palliative care. It's available in some areas with Traditions. That is There's another slide I have later, I believe, that talks about some of the differences. But palliative is when someone is still seeking more aggressive treatments rather than just comfort measures. Complementary therapies, we can allow for short term therapy. If we have a patient who needs assistance with transfers or range of motion, we can provide a few short-term therapy sessions just to help with some of those activities of daily living. Caregiver training, we're constantly learning and growing as a team, so we have the continuing education that a lot of healthcare does. And community bereavement services, we will follow a family for 13 months after the passing of their loved one, but honestly they can reach out to us at any point. So it's not limited just to that 13 months, but specifically, we like to make sure that we get the year of firsts. So that first Christmas, that first birthday, anniversary, those things that come up after a patient passes, we want to make sure that we are there to support the family during those times. This is a little more in depth about our team members. So, as I mentioned, our medical director is that second one listed, but also a patient, when they come onto hospice services, is allowed to choose one attending physician, and that would be their personal physician, whether that be a, a PCP, a primary care physician, or a specialist, maybe someone who has been monitoring their dementia or any kind of specialist. Then they can remain on as part of the team as the attending physician. And that physician, along with our medical director, work hand in hand to make sure that medications are as they need to be and make adjustments if they need to. The number one key person is going to be the nurse case manager. She's going to coordinate with the medical director and the attending physician to make any adjustments to medications or order that equipment if we need it. And so those visits, typically for a hospice patient, they're going to come onto services with a nurse coming to see them 2 or 3 times a week. However, again, I say that Traditions does things differently and does things well. And our team will not hesitate to have a nurse come to see a patient daily if that's what they need. So that's not always the case, but if a patient needs a nurse to come 7 days a week, we have scheduled visits on the weekend. Healthcare doesn't stop overnight or on Saturdays and Sundays. As you can see, we're here, and our team is going to be there as well. And then also a home health aide. So our aides come in and help with personal care and dignity care. So our aides are some of the most compassionate and caring people that I have ever met. They paint fingernails, they shave our gentlemen, anything that is going to help our patients to look and feel their best, because I know that I feel better if I look better. And so that goes for our hospice patients as well. And that's what the aides are there for. The social worker is there to help the patient with any sort of psychosocial aspects, but also social workers are part of the team to support the family. So, outside of the clinical care that a hospice patient receives, the social worker is going to be there to help with end of life planning and resources, anything that families are going to need, again, outside that clinical scope. The clergy, our chaplains, we have a couple who are incredible. They are a good support. They are there to visit the patient in a social aspect, to pray with them, sing with them, play music, but again, are also there as support for families. And that that starts from the moment that a patient comes on services. It's not just at the very end of life for bereavement. So our chaplains are never uh, hesitant to go out and visit a family if they just need additional support. Again, nights and weekends, they're available. We're available 24 hours a day. So, as I mentioned earlier, we like to become the new 911, and that can be clinically, or if someone just needs that support service from the social work or the chaplain, then we're available there as well. I mentioned the therapy. We do short term. We can contract with therapy companies to provide some of that, and then volunteers. And again, those volunteers are trained to um, help with the social engagement of patients and just to spend time with them. All right. The work of the hospice team, we develop that plan of care in conjunction with their primary physician, as well as if a patient is in a nursing facility, we're going to work with that facility to see what is best. Uh, our main goal is to manage pain and other symptoms. We recognize that most patients at the end of life do experience some discomfort and also anxiety and restlessness that comes with the end of life. So, our main goal is to manage those symptoms and can adjust those at any point in coordination with the facility and our physician and the attending physician. We help with the emotional, psychosocial, and spiritual aspects of dying and caregiving. As I mentioned, our services are focused on the patient, but also the family as well. So, anything that goes along with that outside of the clinical, we want to support for that as well. We can teach families for home patients how to provide care, whether that be personal care or administering medications and helping with that. We are there to support and educate. We also advocate for patient and family. If we have a patient who needs another level of care, say they're um, in a nursing facility, in assisted living, we are going to help them walk through those changes. And if that means that their loved one has to move to another location or is at home and can no longer stay at home, then we are going to help with finding a place that they are comfortable with, and that family's close and can still visit. And then, of course, finally provide bereavement care. Again, that is for 13 months after the passing of the loved one, but can go on at any point that they need us, and throughout the care as well. Where is hospice provided? I've touched on some of this a little. Home. As I mentioned, most people would prefer to pass at home, but sometimes home is a private residence, and sometimes it is an assisted living or a nursing facility. Wherever that patient has resided, that has become home, that they are comfortable with, that's where we want to ideally keep them. So if we can keep them out of the hospital, that's what we want to do. So, as I mentioned, that could be a skilled nursing facility or an assisted living facility. We want to help support that facility staff in order to give them the care they need and keep them there. We can provide inpatient care at a hospital or at the hospice house as well. So, really, like I said, wherever someone calls home, that's where we will come and provide the care. Who pays for hospice? So, hospice is covered 100% by Medicare and Medicaid. It utilizes the Part A benefit of Medicare. So I often get a question about, well, I have an Advantage plan. Will it be covered? This is the difference between hospice and home health, the therapies, because we don't, it doesn't matter if it's an Advantage plan, it reverts back to traditional Medicare. And again, it's covered 100% by Medicare and Medicaid. So that includes our staff and our services, as well as the equipment, and anything that goes into that is covered 100%. And then commercial, private insurances, and private pay are also options. We don't see those as often, but we do see those periodically. And so we can run those benefits and see, what that looks like. Again, I don't often hear the word no, because when it comes to insurance and how it's going to be paid for, um, if someone doesn't have insurance, then we can even take charity cases on a case by case basis. So sometimes it's a combination of these. If someone has Medicare and Medicaid and they are in a nursing facility, Medicare is going to cover our hospice services. Medicaid is going to pay for the room and board. So those work together, and that's how a combination of that can piece together. Admission criteria for hospice: life-limiting illness with a prognosis of 6 months or less. So I often get this question too, that mom's not dying, mom's not there yet, and none of us know when the time is going to come. But we have to put, or Medicare, Medicaid, they have to put a something quantitative. They have to put a limit on that, or else everyone would qualify, because we are all going to die. So 6 months or less is what we typically look at. Um, so right now we are into November. If you could look at a patient and say, will they still be with us by next summer? Then if the answer is no, then they probably qualify. But again, Traditions does things a little differently in that my team is amazing at painting the picture of a patient's overall health. So they might have one disease that is their hospice qualifying diagnosis. But then, if there are other things that go along with it that can add into that, they paint the picture really well of what that looks like for the next 6 months. Now, what happens at the end of 6 months? The patient recertifies. So, as long as they still qualify under Medicare guidelines, that they do have a life limiting illness and are not getting any better, then we can still keep them onto services. So, that 6 months sometimes is scary, and you just don't know what that looks like. But I tell people not to focus on that criteria. Let us look at the overall picture and see if that patient qualifies. Live in our service area, of course. As I mentioned, the Indianapolis office covers Marion County and the Donut counties, and then we have offices up north in Indiana, but all across the country. So we're all over and can help coordinate care in other areas as well. Of course, a patient or their power of attorney loved one has to consent to the services and to bill that under their insurance, Medicare or Medicaid or private, as that is, and forego other medical interventions. So we are comfort care versus curative care. And so there's just a couple hard, fast stops that prevent someone to coming on hospice services. Some of those medical interventions would be if someone is still receiving chemo or radiation treatments for a cancer diagnosis. That's considered curative and not quite appropriate for hospice. And another one would be dialysis. Now, it's not 100% that is preventative, because we have been able to work together with uh, having some of those treatments if a patient does have another life limiting illness as well, if they have more than one. So it's not a hard stop, but just an idea to keep in mind. This is just a brief overview of palliative care. What is palliative care? It's the treatment that enhances comfort and improves quality of life while also focusing on some of the other treatments that I mentioned. So they're not quite ready for hospice care. Um, the outcome is relief from distressing symptoms. Maybe they do still want to have those cancer treatments or therapies. Not quite ready for hospice, but we can refer someone to Dr. Miller is our one of our medical directors, and Miller Care Group has a palliative care program. So if someone's not quite ready for hospice, they do still want to seek those curative aggressive treatments, then we can put them in touch with palliative care where they have a nurse practitioner and a caregiver who's going to see them while they also get those other treatments. I mentioned curative care is typical care. It's healthcare. It's what people focus on as we are trying to cure an illness to prolong life. Palliative care focuses on the comfort of life and quality of life while still seeking those other treatments, the therapies, the dialysis, or chemo radiation. And once neither of those options are effective or even an option, then someone would be ready for hospice care. We want to focus on comfort and quality of life when those curative treatments are not a possibility. So, again, someone can be with us on hospice care for quite a while because they do get that one on one specialized care, but they're not seeking any curative treatments. Some online resources that just provide information, some testimonials, videos, and stories. Another one that's not on here is to look up CMS. CMS is the governing body that manages Medicare and Medicaid. And the benefit to looking at CMS is that they provide information about specific healthcare providers. So they would give you information about our surveys as traditions, as well as any other hospice or palliative care providers. I will say that we are so proud, so happy to announce that we got a 5-star rating from CMS. So I believe we're the only hospice provider in Central Indiana that received a 5-star rating from CMS for our care. So it just goes to speak to how amazing our care team is and the focus that they provide for families and loved ones at the end of life. And then I will and traditionshealth.com. We do have an office, but we're not there. And my cell phone is available as well. So if anyone would like that, I am available 24 hours a day, just like our team is available nights, weekends, holidays. We want to be here to support. So I will stop sharing my screen and
Awesome.
go back here.
Good
Okay.
information. Very
Yeah.
good information. Very good information. I was taking notes.
Okay.
I was taking notes just to ask you some follow up.
Okay. Perfect.
Just for the audience so that they can understand things. So I know you mentioned hospice does not hasten or postpone death. And you also spoke about comfort.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak more about the importance of reaching family members to stress the importance of comfort when it comes to senior caregiving?
Yeah, absolutely. That is a big misconception. Oftentimes, people are scared and think that once someone comes onto hospice, that we are going to discontinue all medications and only give them high doses of morphine, for example, and that it's going to speed up the death process. And that is absolutely not our goal. we want patients to be with us and families and the patients to get the benefit of our services for as long as possible. So we're not going to uh, over medicate. We don't want someone to be just constantly asleep because they are on so many medications. At the same time, we want them to be comfortable, and we do sometimes get some hesitancy with people don't want to give the medications just because of that misconception. But comfort is our goal, and so we are always going to reach out to loved ones and explain why maybe the patient needs certain medications. It can help with breathing, it can help with anxiety and restlessness, and really just make that process as good as it can be. Because again, we just want to make sure that they're not in pain and not uncomfortable or distressed. So we're constantly educating and get feedback. If a family is not comfortable with a certain medication, we can change it. We can tweak it to individual needs. But um, and that's another way that having additional resources comes into play, because we want as many people loving on this patient as possible. And so constantly educating, evaluating, reaching out. But the comfort meds, we order what we call a comfort kit at the beginning once a patient is admitted to services, and that includes pain medication as well as anxiety and restlessness medication, and some other things that help with maybe if they develop a fever. But those medications are not necessarily given right away. It might not be used until very end of life. So it's not something that's just automatic. Like I said, we're not going to discontinue other medications and start the pain meds right away. So it's a personalized approach for each one.
Awesome.
It's interesting. Anyway, congratulations on your 5-star award.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
We are
Yes,
very happy about that.
indeed.
I'm
Yes.
sure that's exciting in this field where sometimes, lately we don't see a lot of heart. It's great to know that there's a group that has the heart, because in this field it is about the heart.
Hmm.
If it's just a paycheck, maybe we are all in the wrong field, because there are places that probably pay more, but it's about the heart. So congratulations, and I can testify to you through what I've seen and known. So, but I have a question. You talked about the three kinds of care: the curative care, palliative care, and hospice care.
Hmm.
Does Traditions Health Hospice provide all three?
We do not provide the curative care. So if someone is still seeking aggressive treatment to cure an illness, then they are not quite ready for us. So we do not do that. The palliative care, we can refer that patient to Dr. Miller, our medical director, has a palliative care program, so they can do that, which is where they can still get the clinical care from a nurse practitioner and then also those curative treatments. And then the hospice care is really our specialty. So we can do the palliative and the hospice.
So, Queen, I know you have a follow-up question,
Go
but
ahead.
before then, basically, hospice care focuses on comfort and quality of life when a cure is not possible.
Yes.
So, how does okay? So, quality of life is based on the comfort you give the client or the patient.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, Queen, please go on.
I've had a lot of people that have graduated from hospice,
Hmm.
like Christy said, because of the quality of care that's given. People, they start eating more, so now there's no failure to thrive. They're not having urinary tract infections and falls. They're doing better.
Hmm.
And eventually, when you can't justify, like she said, based off of Medicare regulations, how to keep them on. Some do graduate. I've had hospice residents that have been on hospice for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
and they graduate, because I, I believe hospice strives to continue that connection, like we do in home care all the way through. Um, because things happen, and you want to stay on top of things. You want to develop those relationships, like you talked about before, Queen Edith, about developing relationships, and being proactive with that, with when we're providing health care.
Right.
So I think it's an opportunity to stay connected with this, and those stick with somebody that you trust, because we were talking about this before. Especially with dementia patients, when people become unfamiliar with things, it complicates things, so a familiar face, is important, even with hospice. It's awesome to hear about your team and how you all work together, how there's many pieces and many parts that make up the whole. So when
Mm-hmm.
someone's not there, you have someone else there. I know you guys do it where, I'm sure you all do it where, really end of life situations, when someone's at bedside, when you have a team member from your team at bedside, would you say it's always a nurse or a CNA, or do you have other team members that come out and sit with that loved one,
Mm-hmm.
that patient during that passing time? Because that's what I've seen. It's a representation of a team. So you have all sorts of people that are familiar to this journey that they're
Yeah.
on, present at that time. And I think that's so sacred.
Yeah, absolutely. So, clinically, it's going to be the nurse who's going to be there to make sure that they have the comfort they need at end of life, but also the aide is going to come and provide that personal care to make sure that that patient looks the best and is comfortable. And so we actually have one of our aides who is on the team with Lori, the nurse who we've talked about. One of our aides, her last name is Shaw. And so whenever she provides end of life care, she says that she's giving them the Shaw spa treatment
The
because
shots,
she
I
is,
love that.
yeah, she just makes sure that they are just taken care of and loved on. And you mentioned the that patients graduate, and that's why I like to stress, don't get hung up on that 6-month prognosis, because every disease progression looks different, and even the same illness and diagnosis in one patient might look different in another, especially when we're talking about Alzheimer's and dementia, because those patients, it's not a cookie cutter, and it's different for everyone, and some might progress faster or slower than others. So um, we have a gentleman who's on services who started with us shortly after I came to Tradition. So he's now been with us for about 2 years and is still, on our services. So that is a possibility. And then we also, just yesterday, we had a little lady who did graduate because she has just kind of remained steady and is from that one-on-one care is now stable and is no longer declining. So she graduated. Um, and then I mentioned too about the frequency of visits. When we admit a patient, typically the general idea is that a nurse is going to come 2 or 3 days a week. And our nursing teams consist of an RN and an LPN. So, one of those nurses are usually going to come to see that patient 2 or 3 days a week. But Traditions does not shy away or hesitate to even start a patient on daily nursing visits. Um, I mentioned in my 10 years, I've seen enough to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I've seen where maybe they were hesitant to provide that scheduled care on the weekends. And Traditions does not shy away from that. We provide 7-day a week visits if they need it. And especially, they are really good at identifying when someone is considered to be transitioning. So they are transitioning from their normal routine level of care, but not quite actively passing. And so that transitioning care is the in between, but that's when we're going to increase the visits. So it's going to be daily visits from a nurse, it's going to be aid visits as much as they need to provide that dignity and personal care. But then also the chaplain and social worker are going to be there. One of the metrics that goes into that 5-star rating and also is measured is presence at end of life. And that's one area that Traditions really excels. They can look back on patients who have passed and they can see the frequency of visits in those last 3 to 7 days of life. And we really excel there and get again got us to that 5-star rating because we don't hesitate to do what's necessary for the patients. Also, I've seen where we have ordered equipment or supplies that are specific to a patient, and the expense for that care exceeds what insurance is paying. And so again, we don't hesitate to do what the patient needs, even if it means that, this isn't a money making venture, but it's what they need for personalized care. So my
Yeah,
team is just incredible, and I really just can't say enough good things about from the top down. Everyone works together and does everything that they need.
that is.
I have a question. Home care and hospice care. Some clients, I've heard people say that, oh, mom is on hospice, she doesn't need home care. You talk about your home health aides. Do they come to sit, like if the person needs 24-hour presence, do they come to sit the 24 hours, or they come to provide a service and leave? Can you explain the difference, please?
Yes, I love working with home care because we are not there. While we are available 24 hours a day, we are not there 24 hours a day. Our nurse or aide or any of the disciplines are really only going to be there typically 45 minutes to an hour. Now, if they need continuous care, then we can add that. And there is a level of care that's called continuous care where they need a nurse at least 8 hours. But we still can work together with home care, especially if a family is paying privately for that caregiver. They can do whatever they want because that's private. If they are utilizing, Medicaid waiver services, then we just have to coordinate. So, exactly like you said, we are not there to sit with them 24 hours a day. Our caregivers, our nurse aide, we are there about an hour. But they're also not going to leave after an hour if they need more. But that's where the partnership with a home care company like Peak comes into play because you become the primary caregiver and are there around the clock, and we can work together because when the peak caregivers notice a change, they can reach out to our nurse and we can get adjustments made if there's anything that needs changed as far as medications or that level of care. So yeah, we're not there around the clock and actually rely on your staff to recognize when their patient needs more from us, and it's a partnership.
And
Great.
now I want to ask you a question. So, and I know we're almost out of time. Thank you so much for your time. I wanted to ask you, so I know we talked about, the fear of having the conversation, whether it is home care, it's hospice, just transitioning in senior life. So we talked about the end of life, right? Let's talk about the benefits of hospice. I know, like with the equipment, like she just said, wheelchairs, hospital beds, briefs, or personal undergarments, things like that.
Oxygen.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Even with the medications that are related to the diagnosis. Talk about the benefits, could you please, of having
Yes,
all of that throughout the journey, however long that is for those patients.
sure. Sometimes we have someone start on hospice services who doesn't need anything. They already have maybe a walker or a wheelchair, but they don't need a hospital bed just yet. Um, so they don't have to have it. We can order it at any point. and we can make changes to different pieces of equipment. But as I mentioned, our services is covered 100% by Medicare and Medicaid. So the way I look at it and tell families is, why not take advantage of all the
Mhm.
benefits and all the resources that you can get
Yes.
that you've already paid for by paying into that Medicare benefit?
Mhm.
We work for 50 years and pay into Medicare, so let's take advantage of it. And that includes the hospice related medications, as well as all that equipment and the supplies. So that, especially for home patients, patients who are in a home, or are your private clients, they are supplying and paying out of pocket for those briefs, or the depends, and
And
supplies that,
wipes, and I love that you supply those things. It makes bed pads, and I
hmm
love that you
It's
supply
very
those.
expensive. That's
yeah,
why I wanted to mention it's very expensive. Even the insurers and the boosts,
yeah,
I've had, Lori's good about that too. She's good about hooking up the boost and the insurers. So yeah, you guys do an awesome job. So that's why I know you talked about the equipment, but I wanted you to share those benefits of, just the cost, of having
yeah.
a caregiver having to come out of pocket on top of, caregiving. So yeah.
Yeah, if we can get them the resources that they are entitled to because of that, Medicare benefit, like I said, someone who is 80 or 90 years old worked for 40, 50 years and paid into this benefit. So let's thank them and provide the care that they deserve, and it's covered. So it's no additional expense. And that's another thing that we don't have to even focus on the hospice aspect.
Mhm.
Um, we are Traditions Health. We are here to provide one-on-one specialized care for that patient, and then also provide the services, the equipment, the supplies, all of that. So we just want to get the benefit that they are entitled to for as long as possible.
I love it. I
Me
love
too.
it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And like I said too, I am happy to have that conversation. You mentioned it being a tough conversation. Oftentimes, even physicians, doctors are afraid to even bring up the word hospice. Um, so I'm happy to have that conversation. And I will never forget, I had a conversation with the daughter of a husband and wife couple who are actually both on our services. And I'm having the conversation with the daughter and explaining what we do.
Mhm.
And she just looked um, confused, perplexed. And I said, "You're trying to figure out what's the catch, right?" And she said, "Yes, it sounds too good to be true because it sounds amazing." And I said, "Well, it utilizes the hospice benefit of their Medicare Part A because they qualify with a life limiting illness. It utilizes the hospice benefit." And that kind of took her by surprise because she wasn't even aware that they would qualify. I hear that
Mhm.
so often that families don't even realize that this is an option because unfortunately, the median length of stay on hospice is 21 days. That means that the average person is only utilizing hospice for 3 weeks or less. When the benefit is it is set up for 6 months. And again, as we've talked about, people can graduate, they can
Mhm.
recertify and be on services for longer than 6 months. And unfortunately, people think that it just means that their loved one is going to pass away very quickly. And sometimes that is the case, but we want to keep them comfortable for whatever time we do have, but we want it to be as long as possible. So,
So when you're saying they only utilize it for on average 21 days, are you saying that they're utilizing it that end of life transitioning moment when it's a hurry thing and now
yes,
your loved one is passing and now you're implementing hospice,
comfort care.
correct?
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
and that is unfortunately still the average. I saw a statistic from, I think it was 2018, but it was something like over 1 million people pass every year without hospice. And that is just incredible because, unfortunately, they aren't getting that specialized one-on-one care that can complement the other caregiving that they're getting from loved ones or from a service like Peak. Those are great, and if we can come in and supplement that and work together to provide just the absolute best care at the end of life. I hate to see statistics like that where so many people don't utilize it simply because they are afraid or don't even understand what it is or when someone might qualify. That just makes me think too. One more thing, you mentioned COPD and oxygen.
Mhm.
Um, we can get a patient oxygen just for PRN use if they don't even use it regularly. And we've seen where patients maybe have been to their specialist, to the cardiologist or the pulmonologist, and they don't meet the criteria to qualify for oxygen from that specialist. We can get them oxygen just because, you know, if it's something that would be beneficial, we don't have to meet the same criteria once a patient's on hospice as they would if they were seeing their specialist. So,
Mm.
that just goes into where I said, we don't say no very often because we can get them just about anything that they need.
Awesome. Awesome. Lovely. Did you have any more questions, Queen? I know we're almost out of time. We want to
Yeah.
thank everyone that's listened.
Well, like
There
I said,
are a lot of questions, but
I know.
we don't have questions online either. So, Christy, your final words. What would you say? What do you want people to know? What are their final words for
sure.
this
As
episode?
I've mentioned, hospice doesn't have to be a scary thing, and it is truly an amazing benefit that is just so loving and supportive for families as well as the patient. And as I mentioned, I'm happy to have those conversations and just explain what it is that you're getting with hospice, and that oftentimes people qualify way sooner than they think. The benefits is intended for way longer than that 21 days that unfortunately the average use is. So I am happy to have that conversation. You can reach out to me via email, or my cell phone. I'm available 24 hours a day, but happy to explain. And I also tell people it doesn't hurt to take a look. We can review medical records and see if someone qualifies. The worst that happens is that they're not quite ready for us. They're too healthy for hospice. But there's no harm in evaluating and seeing how we can help to get that benefit for the patient and their loved one. And I'm happy to do that anytime.
Love it. Thank you so much for joining us. We
Yes.
so appreciate you. So appreciate you. Did
Thank
you
you
have
for
anything?
having me.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime. Anytime. So much knowledge. I had a whole bunch of notes here.
Okay, awesome.
Because I mean, you shared so much. So thank you for the education. I hope everyone that has listened feels educated, right? Feels a little more comfortable about hospice and home care, and just trusting what's out there for you. So that's all I have.
All right, thanks, ladies.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure because even I had my misconceptions about hospice. I did too. So it's great to have this collaboration and this education. And friends and family, don't be afraid. As she has said, ask.
Mhm.
Just get the information, develop the relationships. Because life is so uncertain, especially in these days. Develop the relationships, reach out to Christy, reach out to us, and vice versa. Whatever you need, reach out and ask the questions. The service is for your loved one, for your peace, for your respite, whatever it takes. Together, we come to make sure that you get what you need and your loved one get what they need, and together we help, and we make it easier or make it less burdensome, or give you, not just your loved one, some comfort care and respite care as well. Give you the break you need. And it's exciting to come your way. And if these ladies have nothing to say, I'll let Angelina close. But
No,
remember,
you just closed. You did quite well. Thank
remember,
you
we're
all.
always here for you.
Yes,
We are
join us
always
next
here for you.
Saturday. Yes, so it's
You
next Saturday
know, you
every
can
7
reach any of us electronically, 7 days a week.
There you
And
go.
peak, this is what we say: whatsoever our hands find to do, we promise you, we'll always do it well, not by ourselves only, by bringing in all the teams you need to make it work for you. So be careful, take care of yourself, get the help you need for yourself so you'll be better for your loved one. Because when you are tired, you technically abuse your loved one without knowing. So take care of yourself, take care of your loved one, and reach out whenever you need the care. Christy, this is not the end of it. We'll come back with you again. Until we come your way next week, enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.